Well, good morning, and thanks for the organizers for inviting me to present today. And I've got the challenging task to talk about reimbursement. And as Russell alluded to this morning, it's the #1 issue, I think, for our industry as it stands today. So what I intend to do today is to provide a bit of context, to give you the facts, and offer some solutions as per the program and agenda today. I thought when I was asked to give this presentation, I would approach it from a different perspective. And I guess what this slide highlights is my role as a CEO of a local affiliate of a multinational pharmaceutical company and my approach to ensuring that Canada continues to be and is considered an attractive place to invest. And if you think of the Canadian pharmaceutical market and all the challenges we have, it's a very delicate balance because we want to make sure that we can attract investment here, those precious dollars, jobs, research, and more importantly, the products that will help patients. But at the same time, we don't want to oversell Canada in terms of the expectations that we need to deliver to our shareholders. So what you see in front of you here is a bit of a checklist and an approach that we would go through in terms of trying to establish and negotiate within our respective companies on why Canada is an attractive place. If you think of innovation, education, talent availability, I think we rank very, very high and do very well there. We've got great talent and great researchers. We continue to do great clinical trials. We deliver on time. Some improvements in tax credits as well from a Canadian perspective. You look at market size, we're the #10 pharmaceutical market in the world, which bodes very well from an attractiveness perspective. But then it starts to get a little bit more challenging when you dig down and dig deeper. You look at product approval. Peter has just summarized the fact that it is getting better, but still compared to global standards, we are far behind the EU as an example in terms of drug approvals. Pricing is a whole topic for another discussion, but we know that there are pricing challenges in terms of just the approach, the guidelines, and the interpretability of those guidelines for a Canadian perspective. And my focus today is obviously to focus on the reimbursement and what challenges and opportunities lie in the area of reimbursement. We didn't take that and try and summarize that and say, okay, here's the Canadian situation. The shareholder will then take a look at that and say, well, how does that compare to the rest of the world? Where does Canada rank and how do we fare? And things like the types of payers, the types of opportunities, the complexity of the system is what gets considered. That is culminated into local decisions in terms of how should we invest. Is this product going to be viable in the Canadian market? Will there be a market for it? Will there be a price for it? Will there be a payer for it? Will there be a demographic for it? And last but not least, that will lead to whether the product does become available. And I think we all feel that as a developed great country, that our Canadian patients should have access and quick access to our pharmaceuticals. And all of these different complications and challenges can mean that patients may not get access to products that were actually even studied in Canada, or more importantly, that the time to access is extended. So all of that said, my job is really fun. This is a simplified graphic, if you will, in terms of how we would try and describe or show this approach to our shareholders. And what you see here is that it's a quite complex and a lengthy process. In fact, from beginning to end, from time of our submission to authorities to a meaningful reimbursement or access to our product, it can be anywhere from 4 to 5 years. You can see as well that there's many different parties involved. You've got the Health Canada aspect, which looks at safety and effectiveness. You have the CDR aspect, which looks at cost effectiveness. You've got the PMPRB, which looks at maximum allowable pricing. And then you have the negotiations with 13 plans, public plans, and more than 40 private payers. And this is a stark contrast to many of the markets that we compete against in terms of our own internal view of investment, in that common, if you want to call it, country reimbursement, where you have a body that would approve drugs and a body that reimburses drugs, two bodies to really address, is much simpler than the duplication that we see in our system. So with that in mind, obviously it becomes even more challenging to promote Canada as a great place to invest. So my first interactive question is, out of the comparable OECD countries, where does Canada rank in terms of public spending on drugs as a percentage of total country drug costs? So the majority is 15th. I can tell you very clearly that we are 21st, or put another way, we are last. And that basically says that Canada spends less on from a public perspective, less on drugs than our comparator markets. And from that perspective, it really means that I think we look at drugs as more a silo, from a silo approach than a total integrated healthcare delivery approach. My second question is, what is the estimated percentage of drugs paid for as a percentage of the total by private payers in Canada? Answer says 60%. Actually, the average that we're seeing is around 40%, and that's actually illustrated in our next slide here, which does this comparison of these comparator countries from a Canadian perspective. And what you can see, or maybe not see, you can, if you just focus on the Canadian bar here for a second, what you will see as a percentage, the Canadian percentage is the lowest. If you look at the private payer percentage, it actually is one of the highest. So what we do have is a market where the private market or the private payer market is a considerable amount of the Canadian drug spending. We also see that there's a pretty significant out-of-pocket percentage, so patients or consumers also pay a significant part of the healthcare costs. So from that perspective, ranking the fact that we rank low in terms of total spend from a public plan perspective may mean that patients don't get access to the medicines that they should. In contrast, though, we talked about that public might be a low percentage. Really depending on the disease area or the therapeutic area, that can change dramatically. And if you just look at diabetes as an example, you can see that the public segment, actually the public payer segment, it does make up the vast majority. And it can actually be even more specific, even greater if you look at particular provinces. You can see here from the slide that Ontario, Quebec, and Saskatchewan, as an example, have well over 50% of the market paid for by private payers. So with that in mind, it really is an important factor to ensure that governments are paying and reimbursing products for these specific disease categories. So to focus now on the public side, this is a CDR question, and my last of my interactive questions.